secretary, and for many years I was the morning anchor on the NBC affiliate in this area, and now I'm doing whatever I want to do. And that includes what we're doing here today. I am so proud that this leadership conference is now named after Mr. Lewis, that beautiful building that we just saw on that big screen is named after him. But we want to find out more about the man, the uncle, the brother. We want to find out more about the activist, just the person that he was, and what you guys would like to see him remembered for in the years to come. Joining me on the panel, we have brothers to John, Henry Lewis. Raise your hand, dear, so they'll know. That's Henry. Give him a hand for being here today. Next to him, we have Sam. There he is. And then we have nephews, Ron.
Good morning.
And Jerrick. Thank you all for being here on the panel today. They're going to help us get to know him a little bit better. So let's go ahead and dive in. You guys ready to go? Are you guys ready to go? All right, there you are. We have more of his family here. If you guys would just raise your hand and be acknowledged, we'd love to acknowledge his family, John Lewis's family, here with us today. We are just elated that you're here. Henry, I'm going to start with you. Kind of describe being his little brother and growing up in Pike County.
Well, being his little brother by 12 years, I watched him. By the time I was old enough to actually know what was going on, he was already like 15, and moving around. By that time, I was old enough to understand what was happening in the world. So I could see a lot of things then that I didn't realize when I was much younger. So I could see him evolve into a person that was different from the one when I was 2 or 3.
Was he a good brother?
He was an awesome brother.
Yeah.
Awesome brother to a little brother like me being 12 years.
He looked out for you.
He really did. He really did. There are some things that he and I experienced when he was young, I was told by my older siblings. We were raised up on a farm.
Yes, he talked to the chickens.
On a farm. Yeah, we had chickens. We had mules that we plowed. We picked cotton. Whatever farmers did, we were sharecroppers, remember?
Yeah.
So we had to do all of that.
Hard-working family.
Hard-working family. So one thing John was terrified of, and I am too.
What's that?
And that was in the summertime. We were terrified of snakes.
Oh, yeah.
So
I get that.
When you live in the rural, there's going to be some snakes around.
Yeah.
So John nor I went into the woods during the summer.
Okay.
In the winter, we would, but never the summer.
So you never wanted to pick blackberries and plums and all that kind of stuff?
On the edge of the road.
On the edge. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
On the very edge. But he was an awesome brother. I watched him evolve into this awesome leader.
Yeah. And he was a leader around the house, too.
He was a complainer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're getting to the good stuff. Yes,
he was
okay.
a complainer. He actually started, protesting. He didn't, raised on a farm. We raised chicken, but not just for fun. We actually ate those chickens.
Right.
The congressman protests about our parents having to kill those chickens.
Yeah, they were his friends.
Right.
Okay.
But he didn't have a problem eating those
chickens. Okay.
When it became mealtime.
Yes.
So as I grew older and realized what his mission were, I had this, I guess, utmost respect for what he stood for.
And what was that?
He stood for peace. He stood for nonviolence. He actually saw things as a young man that he totally didn't like.
He was called for this.
He was called for this. It didn't just happen.
Yeah.
I watched him evolve into this person. Well, let me tell you this. He told me once, and everybody familiar with his quotes, with the famous quotes. There was one that never got published that he shared with me. He said, if you're afraid to die, you will never start living.
Oh, wow. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Sam, let me ask you a little bit about him. Now, we know that he was very, very young when he joined the movement. Did he announce that to his family, that I'm getting ready to do this, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there? Did he kind of let you guys know what his moves were going to be that he was ready to make, or did he just make them and you found out about it after?
The best I can remember, he just made that movement, and I was still in high school when we started all this. And shortly after I finished high school, I got drafted in the Army. So a lot of it, I missed what he was doing. A lot of it we couldn't see on TV. I think they kept a lot of stuff blacked out from us, from knowing it. But just make a long story short, I am proud of everything that he done.
Yeah.
Because I actually believe he made my life better.
He made all of our lives better.
Made America better.
Yes, yes.
Although he dead and gone, I still think he's making life better.
Absolutely. And his legacy continues through these young men down on the end. So, Ron, let me ask you this. Absolutely. Get the mic back. He has something he wants to say.
I'd like to insert this. There was times after I got older,
Mm-hmm.
and the congressman would go into places that my mom did not want him to go because it was dangerous. And he would tell me where he was going so we would know. But I was not supposed to tell her.
And you didn't?
Well, sometimes I did.
Okay,
Sometimes
okay.
I had to.
Yeah.
There was an uprising up in North Georgia once when he was called to attend to try to settle the differences. And it was real dangerous. I remember it was really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And he told my mom he was not going. But I knew in my heart he was going. So my mom asked me a few days later. She didn't hear from him in 2 or 3 days. So she asked me. That's the time that I had to tell her. She said, tell me, did John go to Georgia? And that she called it that mess.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was
A
tough.
mess. Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, yes, he did. I said, but he'll be fine.
And how did she react to that news when you
Let me
told
tell
her
you,
about
when
those things?
I saw, like I said, when I was much younger, I didn't really understand a lot of things. But when the congressman got really deep into the movement, when all the opposition, all the violence, the Emancipated Bridge, all the violence and stuff,
Right.
I saw a lot of stress on my mom and dad because of the fear.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I have 3 sons, and I cannot imagine.
Yeah, it was really stressful on them. And somebody asked me one time, did any of the siblings have a desire to get
Join
involved in the movement?
Mm-hmm.
My response to them were, I don't think my parents could have withstood 2 children in the movement.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he was deep in it. And, you know, like I said, his legacy continues through his the youngsters in his family, like Ron. Ron being a youngster in the Lewis family and trying to carry this legacy on, what inspires you most about what Unc did to keep this movement going?
I talked about this before, I think last year. I told the story. When Uncle Robert passed, even though it was a sad situation, I also felt guilty. Because when he passed, he wrote an essay. Knowing that he was dying, he wrote an essay that was read at his funeral, telling the younger generation to pick up that torch and carry on. And I felt guilty of being the nephew of this great man and not doing more to help my community. So out of guilt, you know, came to JRL, Legacy Institute.
Yes, and Jerrick, when you see what's going on in the world today, do you think what would John do or what would Uncle Robert do when you guys consider what you want to do as an organization?
Yes, that crossed my mind daily because I asked myself a lot, what would he do in certain situations? He would most definitely speak up. He had a passion to make things great, in this country. He had a passion to make us united. And so as I look in the mirror, I realized as a youngster, I wasn't doing nothing. I mean, he made you face reality, and I was like, wow, I wasn't really living for anything. I feel like now I'm living for something. I feel like now I'm living to make a difference. I have the mindset that I'm going to make a difference. I don't question myself no longer. I'm no longer going to apologize for who I am. I'm comfortable being in his shoes. And so I'm here to make a difference. I'm going to make a difference, and that's just going to be the way it is.
That is beautiful and so hopeful to hear. When you were little and watching him do what he did so well, motivate people and inspire people, and was kind of like the chaplain of the Congress, the conscience of Congress. When did you realize what a big deal your uncle was? How old were you think? And what was that turning point?
Well, growing up on the same family land, I'm pretty sure my cousins that's here with me now agreed that. We just knew we were supposed to put on a John Lewis shirt that said vote for John Lewis when we was young. And we didn't understand all of the cameras around. We didn't understand the magnitude of who he was at that time, because at the end of the day, he was going to be our uncle no matter what.
Yes.
And we respected that. So he was always Uncle Robert first. But, after I got older and kind of got rid of the part of me that was trying things on my own, I started to realize the magnitude and what he stood for. And then I started paying attention. Then I started holding myself accountable. And as Ron stated earlier, especially after he passed, that was a long 2 weeks, to go through that entire process of, being here in Troy and understanding what he did for this community, but also understanding that Troy is what got him started on his journey, by being denied admission to this college. And now being able to be on the quad and see John Robert Lewis Hall, that's something that I don't take for granted. And going on to Selma to be a part of that service and come to Montgomery, then go to D.C., then come back to Atlanta, I was like, wow, what are we doing? Like, we got to stand for something. And that's just what we want to do. And like I stated earlier, I'm just no longer ashamed. And being a part of that family, when I see him, when we talk about him, I can't help but think about my grandmother, because she's kind of like that hidden gem that a lot of people don't talk about. And she was the woman that kept us together. This woman she fed an entire village. This woman cooked breakfast, lunch, dinner for an entire community. So when I see John Lewis, when we talk about him, I think about her. I think about my grandfather. I think about it being on this stage, starting with my dad, starting with my uncle. As a little kid, I always wondered, why did my Uncle Sam just stand on the hill in the morning time? And he got up really, really early. So on my darkest days in life, I would reach for these men. I would reach for my uncle, because they helped me, because I saw something. They had a vision. They was always working. I came from a very, very working family. These men, they worked. Yeah. They were still working. These two men gave me my first job. I got out of high school, didn't know what I was going to do. Started washing cars at Bill Jackson. My Uncle Sam got me on at the Curl Market. These men helped develop me into the man that I am today, and I have to give that testament to my grandmother.
That's beautiful. What a blessing to have a family that sticks together like that. As I've gotten older, as my father's gotten older, he's a Vietnam veteran. And I remember us not really talking about that so much when I was growing up. But now it seems like he wants to share that. So later in John's life, did he share things with you that happened outside of what we saw, like Bloody Sunday or what happened, the Freedom Riders? Did he tell you little stories, little tidbits? And if you don't mind sharing some of that maybe he held on to because he wasn't sure that you guys were ready to hear that until later?
Yeah, there are some things he shared with us. But before I get into that, I would like to say, during the early movement, when he would come back to Troy, And I think this is very important for people to know that really don't know. There are times when the congressman, well, then John Lewis, would come to Troy, and because of his notoriety and the opposition to what he believed in, we would ride up in the heart of Troy, park up at Burris Drug. There used to be a little parking area on the side there you park. John would not get out of the automobile
Why?
in fear of what people that oppose what he was involved in may do, or may do to his family even after he leaves Troy.
Right, right. He
So-
did that for not only his safety, but for the safety of his
Yeah.
family. Yeah.
Of his family.
Yeah.
So those are things that a lot of people don't realize. And I think that was the disgraceful part I was talking about on my parents. But at the same time, they was extremely proud. But get back to your original question. There are things that happened during the movement that he shared with us, conversations, and I don't think I need to really repeat some of those, but there were moments in the movement when he actually felt like he might not make it.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Times he might
That he
have,
might not make
you
it.
know, cried or been afraid. We didn't
Yes.
see those times.
Yeah.
We didn't hear about those times.
Right. He shared a moment, or shared with us one time when they was marching across the Edmonds Prentice Bridge. His mate there, you know, they're walking in twos. He asked John, said, "What are we going to do?" Because there was a sea of blue. There was fire hoses, everything waiting. John said, "One thing for sure, I can't swim. I can't drink all this water. So we're going to have to face the blue."
Yeah.
And when they told them to disperse, they had 1 minute, 5 seconds before they was attacked. That's when he realized in his mind, I might not make it home.
Yeah. Yeah. Sam, did you guys see what happened on Bloody Sunday on television like the rest of us, or were you there?
We watched a lot of it on television.
I think that was a turning point for a lot of people. What were your feelings when you saw that play out? A lot of people had seen pictures of the protest. A lot of people had read articles about it in the newspaper. But a lot of people see the video, seeing it on the TV news in video, in motion, seeing that water come out of those hoses, seeing those dogs and hearing them barking at them as a turning point that turned a lot of people around toward the movement. Do you think that's true?
Yeah. Like I said earlier, being on TV, we might not have got a chance to see a whole lot of stuff. But there was enough seen that we know that he was what he was doing wasn't safe. And I feel like that he had a Mosby moment that God prepared him for this mission. And there wasn't no turning back. So he played it out.
Yeah, he did. And, you know, the last time I saw him was on that bridge. It was the last time he was at the jamboree or that they have up there every March. We weren't expecting him there because he hadn't been feeling so well.
Right.
And
He didn't
I
tell us
heard-
he was going either.
He didn't tell anybody,
No, he
apparently,
didn't.
because we were not expecting him. We were just walking over the bridge, you know, going through the motions, and we heard people scream like Michael Jackson had showed up or something. He was a rock star. He just was there, and he danced, and just seeing that. He always looked like a little boy, even when he was, you know, he got so much older and wasn't feeling his best. But it was something about seeing him that day that really reinvigorated people. They were so inspired. Did he do that for you guys whenever he came home, whenever you saw him? Ron, did you just get that feeling like not only is my uncle home, but talking about some of the things that he had recently done? He was always doing something.
Yes, of course, he was always busy. But when he came home, I got a lot of cousins. It was about 25 of us. And we was his fun side. He came home and he get to cut up with his nieces and nephews. So
he was funny?
Oh, yes, yes. He was funny. He was messy.
Messy?
Yeah, he was messy. Yeah. But, so we didn't talk a lot about the things he done. Like, that was kind of like his downtime when he came home.
Yeah.
But it's not that we didn't know what he done. I'm a history buff. I love history, so I dig deep into it, just about everything he's done. So, but it was always good to see him. It was never long. It was only like a couple days.
Yeah. Did you go see him? Did you go see his office?
Yes, we went to see him. And that was always a
That's
treat.
pretty
He
cool,
loved doing
huh?
that now.
Yeah.
Show you the office, walk around. He didn't look like a young man. He wasn't a young man, but he was always fast.
Yeah.
And you couldn't keep up with him. But
yeah.
but the things he did, to go back on, like you said, some of the things he did and some of the things I learned, like going to Parchment, work for him in prison in Mississippi.
Tell us a little bit about that.
You always read about John Lewis got arrested 41 times. And you think about, like, they get arrested for marching, they go to jail for a couple nights, refuse bail, then after a while they let them out. But they actually got arrested and went to Parchment Prison in Mississippi for over a month, almost a month and a half. Anybody know anything about Parchment Prison? Just Google it.
You don't want to be there.
You don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people don't make it out alive. I mean, that was like a rite of passage for men back during that time between the 30s all the way up to the 60s with a stint in Parchment Prison. It's a work farm. There used to be a plantation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
In Mississippi, yes.
He said that was in Mississippi, just so you guys understand the gravity of that situation. I was at the memorial service that took place here in Troy. It was one of the most beautiful things I have ever witnessed. And I remember Troy Mayor Jason Reeves talking about the impact that the congressman had on him growing up, and your family in general. How does that make you feel, Sam, when you realize that even though your brother has gone on, that he is still influencing so many people, and especially the leaders in their community and in the very community where he grew up?
Actually, it made me feel good because back then it looked like we was always on the back row. But since John gone, like people is still lifting him up. And so it made me be proud and know that everybody ain't against what we believe in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They believe in what he was and what he is.
Right.
And Jerrick, what about how we can remember him now? The actions that we can take, the places that we can even go here in this area to remember him. We talked about this beautiful building. I mean, that's saying a lot about a person. Now, this is a big campus. They could have picked some little building off on the side in the outskirts, on the back of the campus somewhere, but there it is, like you said, right in the middle of the quad. It is the centerpiece of this beautiful campus here in Troy, the main campus. So what would you say is a good way if we want to carry his legacy on? What's the best way to do that?
Vote. That would, first and foremost, I would say get out and vote. I mean, that's what he laid his life on the line for.
Yeah.
I don't care who you vote for, but just exercise your right to vote. I mean, you think about the things that they had to endure during those times by, how many jelly beans in a jar? How many bubbles of soap? Had to count all that for them, just for us to have the right and for us to sit down and not exercise our right to vote. We're not doing that era. We're not doing those foot soldiers of of that time any justice. So that would be my thing, get out and vote, and simply just look in the mirror and just be a good person. Ron and I talk about all the time about investing in ourselves. So before you can present something good to somebody else, you got to invest in yourself. So I would say just invest in yourself, whether that's mentally, whether that's physically, but just invest in yourself and become a better person and bring someone with you. You know, don't be selfish. Bring someone with you. I mean, who are you bringing with you in this daily life of ours? Because John Lewis brought somebody with him. He brought an entire nation, and he's continuing to bring up this nation. So let's continue to, you know, get out and vote, and let's continue to unite. It's okay to disagree, but that doesn't mean we can't eat together. That doesn't mean we can't be in the same room. So I just think that's something that we need to understand as a people before we can move forward.
And I hope hearing you say vote and applauding and talking about the jelly beans, some of these younger people, I'm looking around, we have a lot of young people in here and young at heart. But that might not understand what you mean by the jelly beans because they haven't been educated. They didn't learn about that in school or maybe haven't seen a movie about it. So just tell them what you mean by that. It wasn't always you could just show up and vote at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at your voter registration precinct.
Well, back then when they tried to deny us the right to vote, we actually had the right to vote, but you know, during Jim Crow, they did everything to deny you the right to vote. So you'll go in the registrar's office to register to vote. They'll have a jar and say, well, you got to tell us how many jelly beans in this jar. Questions like, how many bubbles are in a bar of soap? You know, questions that couldn't be answered. So no, well, you failed the registration part, you can't vote. You know, just stuff like that.
And as we see some movement toward taking that kind of history out of public schools, do you think, as I do, that it's so much more important now to educate yourself? Don't wait for the schools to educate you about who you are and whose you are and where you came from.
Right. I'm very big on that. One of the programs we have is Trench Coat and Backpack Youth Literacy Program. And like you say, I love history. I educate myself on history. I'm not a history major. You can educate yourself. We all carry around a device in our pocket, got all the information in the world in it, in books, book on your phone, Audible. That's my favorite app on my phone is Audible. I'm listening to one of my uncle's books for the second time. But yes, educate yourself. One thing I regret is not getting more involved in what my uncle was doing. And I think when we was younger, we always felt like as long as Unc was there in Congress, that we had a voice that was representing us as a family. That's the way I felt. Mm-hmm. But when he passed, you know, like I said, I kind of felt guilty. Like, you know, now I have to be my own voice. You know, so yeah, educate yourself. You don't need anybody else's education. We took kind of a hit with our Trench Coat and Backpack program, giving away books to schools. Started out giving to school libraries, but now they want to critique every book, and most of the books are about John Lewis and Black history. But now they want to go through and say, no, you can't give this book. And some of those books is on the reading program, the accelerated reading program.
Yeah.
The AR books.
Yeah.
And some schools won't accept them.
Yeah.
So we had to pivot and try to give them to after school programs, put the books in the kids' own hands instead of donating them to the libraries. And I think it's a shame that a school won't accept a book on civil rights. When civil rights was not just for African Americans, it enabled women, Asian Americans, and everybody else.
People with disabilities,
right.
Veterans, yeah.
Before the civil rights movement, women didn't have rights, black women or white women, so it's a shame.
It really is, and we can see that the tide seems to be shifting. So Again, I want to, as we close out and open the floor for questions, just if you have one final thing that you would like for us to know about your brother, just grab the mic and let us know what that is.
There's one thing I want everybody to know, and some know because some had some interacting with the congressman. He was the kind of person, he never put himself out front. You would be. I've seen him make speeches.
Mm-hmm.
There may be 30 kids. I'm talking about elementary kids or more.
Yeah.
And he would, after the speech, he would shake everybody's hand on stage. But before he talked to people out in the audience, he was going to go to each one of those kids
Wow.
and make them feel real important.
Yeah.
Because they were.
And they might be who they are now because of that one interaction.
And
Yeah.
if any of y'all that's in here ever been to his offices in Atlanta or Washington, he would give you time like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I've been at his office when people would come up from Alabama. When people come from Alabama, he'd go crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, that was from home.
Yeah.
And he would just take them all around, out on the floor, out on the voting floor. He did everything.
Yeah.
And even in Atlanta, the same way. But he was the type person that he would make you feel like you're somebody.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that's just the way he was.
I remember spending time with him here when he was a speaker here, and we were just supposed to take the picture and move on.
Right.
But somebody literally had to come tap both of us on the shoulder and say, okay, it's somebody else's turn. Because, and I'm telling you, it was as many people as sitting in here now, and he made me feel like I was the only person in the room. That he had a gift of that. But Sam, what about you? What do you remember?
I'm gonna tell you one other thing.
Okay.
One of the things I really remember about him in the time that I spent on Thanksgiving Day, when everybody else was celebrating Thanksgiving, my wife and I would go to Atlanta. She would go to her sister's in Atlanta. She would take me by the congressman's house. And he and I, for several years, would spend Thanksgiving together.
That's wonderful.
So a lot of times she would cook us food once they have at Thanksgiving.
Uh-huh.
But during the middle of the day, the congressman would want to go to Costco's or wherever, to a grocery store, and just get a loaf of bread. And he would talk to so many people while we were there. By the time we got back, Thanksgiving was all gone. I mean, it was dark.
That was his Thanksgiving.
That was his thing.
Yeah.
He had to talk to people, and then we would spend a lot of our Thanksgivings feeding the hungry in Atlanta.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that I really enjoyed doing with him. With thousands and thousands of people.
He just gave.
He just gave.
Yeah.
He gave.
Of his time,
He
his
gave-
energy.
He gave his entire life.
Yeah. Yeah.
He came in the world giving.
Hmm.
He went out of the world giving.
And we will never forget it.
Right.
We will never forget it. And Sam, what about you? What do you want us to remember about him?
I just want to add something to what Jerry was saying about voting. He asks people now about voting. Did you vote? Oh, my vote don't count. No, it don't count if you don't vote. But you good. Whether you don't know what count or not, go ahead and vote. Because he got one mark. He said the most, I can't remember how it went. Voting is the most precious gift or right that you have. So you got the right to vote. People die for you to have that right to vote. Get out and vote. No, you don't know who's going to get elected. But the person you want to get elected, if you don't vote, no, he ain't going to get elected. So don't kill the right to vote. A lot of people died for us to have that right. So get out and vote.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, one of the things I try to tell people to remember about my uncle, that's I always try to keep in my mind when I read his book and read about the things he did. he was an ordained minister at 15. That's how he got noticed by Dr. King. And he wasn't just a guy that would go out and drink or chase women. This guy, he was serious at a young age. So I truly believe he was following a calling. Yeah. He was called to do what he was doing. And like a lot of those ministers like Dr. King, and he followed that calling throughout his life. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, an ordinary person couldn't have done what he done. Yeah, he was actually called, and I think he did it all his life. And the thing I want you to remember is how he knew when to pivot. Like, he knew when the marching and going to jail wasn't working anymore. And he knew when to pivot and got into politics and try to fix things from the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant man.
Yeah.
A beautiful
It's
life.
like he always knew ahead of time, like, what to do. So that's why I believe, like, he was truly called and he was following the path of God.
And Jerrick, just to round things out, I know you guys keep his legacy going through JRL. How can people find out more about that and get involved if they like?
You can go on our website at John R. Lewis Legacy Institute.org. And one thing about programs, it takes money. So you can hit the donate button and you can contribute that way. Or you can follow us at John R. Lewis Legacy Institute on Instagram. You can sign up for our newsletters on the website and receive weekly updates. And yeah, yeah. And but one thing I would love for everyone to remember about my uncle was he was a family man. He was a great uncle, and he took time out of his busy schedule to be an uncle, whether it was coming to our weddings, whether it was coming to our graduations. Like, he took time out for his family. He enjoyed being around his brothers. He loved his mother. I know he loved his grandfather, but my grandfather passed away in 1977, so I didn't have the luxury of being able to meet him, but I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and I know just as my dad and my other uncles and my aunts, I know he was crazy about his mom. Andrew Young told me one time that during the movement, a lot of people really didn't believe in him because he's from the rural area. So a lot of people just looked at him as he was just this old country guy, from the country. So, they was like, just didn't believe in him. But Ambassador Young told me he was the most courageous man that he's ever met in his entire life. He would not want this. He would not want this. He wouldn't even think that he deserved for him to be a topic today. That's just the kind of man that he was. He was very humble.
Yeah.
Very, very humble man, for sure.
Ma'am, but it was a pleasure to hear from you today, to get this insight. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Henry Lewis, Sam Lewis, Ron Lewis, and Jerrick Lewis. Thank you all